Stephanie Dobson is back with us again this week for another episode of Healthy Thriving Family After Divorce. Stephanie is a lawyer and mediator here with Hanka Divorce Law and Mediation in Lloydminster. And today we're going to start a two-part series talking about the top 5 questions asked when going through divorce or separation. So Stephanie, let's talk about question number 1, where you have it listed as I'm separating. What type of professional should I hire and when should I hire them?
Well, the first thing I want to address in this particular question is what I call the cause and effect nature of this question. So for many people, they'll recognize that they're separating, and then they automatically assume that the next step is to hire a lawyer and to do it right away. So what I thought I would do is just expand our viewers' frame of reference of the types of professionals that they can hire. And this is really, really important in my opinion. Your experience going through the journey from together to separated or divorced will be shaped by the type of professional that you choose. So there's a couple of different types of professionals. So one would be a lawyer and one would be a mediator, which a lot of our viewers will be familiar with. But even within the realm of lawyers, there's ones who focus on different negotiation processes. So some lawyers focus on using the court process to get resolution, and some lawyers focus on staying out of court. So in the case of my firm, which is Hanka Divorce Law and Mediation, all of the services that we offer are out of court negotiation processes. So our services might be right for some families and certainly not for others. But the question then of when to hire that divorce professional is really dependent on the situation. I always recommend that people get in to meet with someone as soon as possible, even if that's before the separation happens. For most people, separation and divorce is a foreign world, and the sooner that you can get professional guidance, the more informed and empowered you'll be to make the best possible decisions for your family.
And question number 2, Stephanie, is do I have to go to court? I think a lot of people think that automatically you have to go to court through this process. So what is the answer to that question?
Well, again, it's another cause and effect. And I get this question all the time, especially because one of the first things that I tell potential new clients is that I don't have a court practice. So their typical response is, well, I don't want to go to court. So that's perfect. But there's a little bit more to it. So there's 2 reasons that you might need to go to court. So one is to get a judge to help you to arrive at resolution, to give you a court order on certain topics like spousal support or parenting or something. The other is to actually file your paperwork to formalize your separation or divorce. So in the context of whether you need to go to court to get a judge to provide you with resolution, this can be a tricky question. And the issue of need is often dependent on your situation. And it's also dependent on how willing and able you and your former spouse are to coming to that negotiation table. So I help families in all sorts of out-of-court settings. So there can be lots of trust, no trust. Lots of conflict, generally amicable. You can like one another or you can dislike one another. The commonality about staying out of court for my clients is that both spouses are willing to come to that table to deal with the issues that need to be dealt with and commit to that until mutual agreement is reached. So court may be necessary in a few different situations. I'll give you some examples now. So one spouse might be resisting something, or they might be patently unreasonable, or they may be making decisions unilaterally that detriment the whole family. So even if one spouse wants to stay out of court, court may in fact be the only place that you can get resolution because you need a judge to help you.
Now, is there a difference depending on whether you live in Alberta or Saskatchewan? It's something obviously in Lloydminster that we're kind of used to dealing with, but what's the difference depending on the province that you live in?
Well, the answer, of course, is most definitely yes. So at our office, as you say, just living in a border city, it's always one of the first questions that we ask because, first of all, there's different procedural rules in each province. And second of all, there's different laws that we have to follow depending on the province where you live. So for starters, the procedural rules. So for example, married couples who are wanting to get a divorce will need to file their paperwork through the court set up in the province of their residence. So we talked a moment ago about whether separating couples need to go to court. So in the context of filing the paperwork, yes, you'll have to file the paperwork in the court where one of you has lived for at least 1 year. Now, of course, that's in the context of divorce. So if neither of you have lived in your province for a full year, then in fact, you can't file that divorce paperwork until that threshold has been met. So another difference is the laws. So of course, as our viewers will be familiar that there's federal laws and then there's provincial laws. So for topics like parenting, child support, and spousal support, the Federal Divorce Act applies to spouses who are married and looking to get a divorce. So this means that technically the wording of that Divorce Act is the same for residents in both provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan. However, the way that the court applies those rules is different in each province. So for those of you who are unmarried, you'd be looking to provincial legislation. Division of assets is another one, just I wanted to touch on right at the tail end here. That's also under provincial jurisdiction. So it does matter whether you live in Alberta or Saskatchewan because the laws are very different in each of those provinces.
All right, Stephanie, well, thank you so much for joining us today. And when we come back next week, we will continue this discussion. There's so much to always consider when it comes to this subject. So we'll speak with you more on this again next week.
Great. Thanks for having me, Stacey.